Hi folks, and welcome back to Math with Captain Rod. I'm making this video here to help you out with the idea of polynomial division. So what we're going to do in a few minutes here is we're going to work on this, dividing 6x to the fourth plus 5x to the third plus 3x minus 5 by 3x squared minus 2x. Now, before we do that, however, I'm going to talk a little bit about polynomial division in general. And before we do that, we're going to take a look at this numerical example. It's very important in math and in life in general to learn to use what you know to learn new material. So in this example, like 9 halves, if we were to write that, we're taking 2 and dividing that into 9. This is how this would normally be written in terms of like radicals. And most people probably have done this before at some point. You ask yourself, well, how many times does 2 go into 9? And the answer to that is 4 times. Then you multiply, you get 8, and you subtract. Now, this 1 here is referred to as your remainder. And what that means is 9 isn't divided by 2 evenly. 9 divided by 2 is 4, but there's this 1 left over. And what that means is the 9 divided by 2 is equal to 4 plus 1 half, because remember, this was over 2 here. So that remainder, I like to think of it like this, still needs to be divided out, if you will. So functions work the same way. If you understand this example numerically, I mean, fundamentally you should understand how functions are defined or work. So let's say I have some sort of polynomial function that I'm dividing by another polynomial, and I just call those f and q to give them names. This will typically equal a third function, which I'm going to call d, but they may or may not have a remainder, which means that, if you do have a remainder, when you do this division, you're going to get some function, some polynomial, plus this, just like over here. All right, so I'm going to go through an example of what this looks like. So we're going to take this 3x squared, and I'm going to start a little high here because sometimes this takes a lot of work, 3x squared minus 2x, and we are going to divide it into 6x to the fourth plus 5x to the third plus 3x minus 5. And I think I'm going to maybe move that down a little further. Okay. Now, when you do the polynomial division, right, it's essentially the same as, it's essentially the same as this stuff, but it's a little more complicated because you got a bit more going on. So you always look at the first term. So you take a look at this, and you ask yourself, how many times does 3x squared go into 6x to the fourth? And the answer is 2x squared times. Right? Then you multiply. So when we take this times this, we get 6x to the fourth, but you have to multiply all of it. So then we're going to have minus 4x to the third. Then you subtract. And again, just like we did up here, we multiplied these two things, got 8, and then we subtract to get 1. Now 6x to the fourth minus 6x to the fourth is 0. If you're doing this correctly, that first term, that should always give you a 0 if you've chosen the correct value for this. 5x to the third minus a minus x to the third is 9x to the third. Don't forget, when you subtract a negative, that turns into a positive. 3x minus, now there is no x term, so you could think of it like 3x minus 0, so plus 3x. And then negative 5 minus 0 is, again, minus 5. Okay, so now, onward we go. So now, we say to ourselves, well, how many times does 3x squared go into 9x cubed? And the answer to that is plus 3x times. Then we multiply this times this, and we get 9x to the third minus 6x, and that's it. Put this in parentheses so you don't miss any minus signs, and then we subtract. And then 9x to the third minus 9x to the third is 0x to the third. That should always happen if you're choosing the right values for these. 3x minus a minus 6x is 9x. And negative 5 minus nothing is minus 5. Now, next you ask yourself, well, how many times does this go into this? And that can't be divided, right? So when you get to something like this, here, we're done. And this is what's left over here. So again, that's called your remainder. So let me color code this. So what we have here is this is the f of x, and I'm looking here, divided by some q of x, that's this. That's going to equal some d of x, which is this, plus r of x over the q of x, right? So basically what that means, let me finish this out, is that this division is equal to this 2x squared plus 3x plus 9x minus 5 over 3x squared minus 2x. And that's done. And the polynomials did not divide evenly, and that's just fine. And again, what this means working it backwards, if we added this to this, used a common denominator, which would be this thing, we'd end up back to here. So anyway, that's a little bit about polynomial division. I'm going to try to keep these videos a little on the short side, but that's kind of the gist of it. I hope that this helped you learn something about dividing polynomials. Have a great day.